Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I'm Annette Fox. This is my home, and there's my husband Uri. We're very pleased to host this book launch for Rav Zev's new book, The Three Images, and we welcome you all. I'm not even going to introduce him because you all know him already. Okay, so. And we even have a baby.
There's chairs here and here.
We have a baby, and we have a teacher, and we have somebody from Svat, and we have Cynthia.
You're stealing all. I wrote that all down. You stole all my thunder.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Annette and Uri's home. There's a lot of thank yous. I'll come later at that. But just to start off, because of Potrim Lichvod Achsanya, I want to say thank you to Annette and to Uri for opening their garden. I'm supposed to wait.
Yeah. Silence your phone, please.
Yeah.
Anyone who goes off, I'll just take. You'll put it right. Just put it in the safe. You have to get it back from Muskie, usually. For the parents, right? But first, again, thank you to Annette and to Uri for opening their home. I welcomed everybody, but there are a couple of special welcomes that I can't skip. Dave, where are you sitting? Oh, standing. Dave Bender. He came in from Tzvat, and we have been in touch for, I don't know, last couple of years, I guess. It's the first time we met in person, in real life. So it's really, truly appreciate your coming here. Magnificent photographer, has product he sells. You could check him out online. I also want to welcome home Cynthia. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's great to have you back in the country. My dear friend Bracha, Jasmine, thank you very much. And the little one, I forgot the name. Shoham. Thank you very much. Shoham's first book launch. Pretty cool. And to everybody. Really, I know that some of you it's just literally a few steps, and for others you it's a little bit further, but whoever came, I really do appreciate that. I want to explain to you how this is gonna run. The first 3 hours, had to do something like that to make sure you're awake. The first just few minutes, what I want to do is spend on the second volume of my Piyut book, because many of you either have it already, you heard my talk last year, so I just want to spend just 5 minutes on that. We'll read one Piyut, and then after that, with an explanation, then I'll talk about the book, the three images, the background, and at the end, for those of you who are interested in buying anything, you'll be able to take care of that at the end, and I'll be more than happy to sign. On the Piyut book, which this is the second volume I was zocheh to come out with just a couple of weeks ago. It's called Zmirot HaZamer B'Piyut. The acrostic is by name Ze'ed. And again, the book was born at Amit Boys here in Ma'ale Adumim. Amit Eitan. Again, the story, the whole background, without going to all the details once again, because many of you heard this last year, having assisted in the classroom of Sifrut, of literature, and learning along the way about how a piyut is structured, especially for the times of the Middle Ages, the Yemei Beinaim, I kind of fell in love with it and started to write one or two, and I had some teachers help me along the way and say, this is good, this has to be changed. And eventually it was suggested to me very highly by our principal, by Daniel Be'evi, that I turn it into a book. And I did, and I was very happy, and I didn't have any expectation of coming out with another one, even though I kept writing. And then I figured, okay, im kvar az kvar. And this book, the second volume, came out just a couple of weeks ago. The first book was dedicated to my father's memory, who had passed away not long before I published. This book is, the second volume is in memory of Avigdor Chai Avram ben Meir Tzvi Rachalea, known also as Avram Lifshitz, Zichrono Livracha. His middle name Chai, 18, and that's why there are 18 piyutim in the book. It is the Zecha Nishmato, with the hope and prayer that anytime someone reads from it, learns from it, understands the pasuk a little better, it'll be Le'ilu Nishmato. The topics that are covered in the second volume are similar to the first, but a little different also. Some are a little bit more personal, relationship with Hashem, Yerushalayim, something about my father. Obviously, there's a piyut specifically written in the beginning of the book for Avram's, in Avram's memory. It was actually written during Shiva. And topics that hopefully awaken a person's idea and mind in ways they may never have thought of before. What I'd like to do, with your permission, again, after I read this piyut and explain it, we're going to move into the English book, but I do feel I want to take just a minute to read through one piyut. I'm going to do it twice. I'm going to read it straight through. It's short. And then I'm going to read it again and explain it. If you don't, I know I don't have enough copies. Sorry. If you don't mind, just maybe. It's going to be on the test next week, so you might want to pay attention. Tomorrow morning.
The school's over already.
No, not yet. Not yet. Getting close. Getting close. Oh, for some schools over in August already. Last August. It helps if I have it in front of me too, I guess.
You come without your glasses.
You can share if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We'll share. Here, here.
Waiter,
Yeah, there's more over here.
there's more over here. Okay, spread the wealth. By the way, I should note that there is a woman named Nava Giat. Her husband Shalom, I work with at Amit, who is the graphic designer of this particular volume and the first volume. The two piyut team did a magnificent job. Also in choosing with us, my wife and myself, choosing pictures that are matim. Every piyut has a piyut. The facing page has an explanation and or background with a picture that's matim for that particular piyut. This one's called Behereth Ayin. Within this particular piyut, I picture myself standing after 120 years in a very scary position of standing before the Kisei HaKavod, standing before Hashem after 120 years. It's called Behereth Ayin. Behereth Ayin omed b'shavrir zvulav, pachad kishoresh השופט וגם שילוחיו, קולות וברקים ושרפים עומדים ממעל, הגיע העת לענות על כל מעל ומעל. אל מי אנוסה לעזרה ביום פקודה, ארום בזעיר בינתי ומלא חרדה. הספר נפתח במכתב מכתב ידי. אוי לי מיום הדין, בכלום נחשב נדודי. בצלך תסוכוני, אני רק אנוש. עשה עמדי חסד ותימנע מלענוש. General meanings as follows. In the blink of an eye, I stand before God. And again, with the footnotes, you'll understand a little bit more and where the connections are to psukim. But in the blink of an eye, I stand before God in fear, trembling, when I see the shofet, meaning Hashem and his messengers, the angels. There's sounds, loud sounds and thunder, and the angels, the srafim, are above. The time has come to answer for everything I've done wrong in this world. To whom shall I run for help on this day, the day of Pekudah? You'll see in the footnote the meaning. I stand naked with a very small amount of knowledge and filled with trembling fear. The book is written, and the book is written with my own handwriting, meaning the story of my life. It's based on Midrash that when you get up after 120 years, you are writing down everything that you did in your life, and you sign it. Woe is to me for the day of judgment. All my actions are considered as nothing. In your butt, it sounds very depressing, but on an up note, in your shadow, please cover me. I'm just human. Please do with me a form of chesed and don't punish me, at least not too much. So that's the one of the 18 that's in this book. And it is, I have found people have told me after they have the first volume, some have the second one also ready, that they've taken one or two and they read it on a consistent basis. They connect it to something. There's one about Yerushalayim. People like, again, not everything in the book is going to talk to you. It's not going to speak to you. Some will more, some will on a deeper level. So I've had people say like, oh my God, I could have written this, meaning this is exactly the story of my life. So whatever it is that you can find in this, b'simcha, just as an aside, I not only love to write piyutim, I have no set time I write it. I just sometimes I'm inspired and I write something. But I'm already ahead of the game. There's more to come, Bezrat Hashem, God willing. And it's truly a pleasure to be able to do that. Let's talk about the next book. I did not intend to come out with 2 books at the same time. There was no intention ever of doing that. Matter of fact, this book, Shalom's excited. It's okay. It's up to you. So trust me, I'm not that exciting, Shalom.
No, she's tired.
Me too. Before everyone got here, I was just sitting here yawning. Anyways, so this book is actually 23 years in the making and a few weeks in the making. What am I talking about? I need to give you a little bit of background on how this book came to be. The way it came to fruition that I actually have a book in my hand. And along that, with part of that introduction, comes some extreme strong thank yous. Many of you know that I served as the Rav of a shul called KJBS, Kibbutz Jacob Bet Samuel, in Chicago. Many of you don't know is that I grew up in the shul. I had my bar mitzvah there, my ofruf, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when I took over as Rav, it was a situation where I already knew people's shtuyot. I knew who was going to come to me right before Tisha B'Av and say, "Don't say that, Nachem, it's wrong. You got to make the new one." I already knew what to anticipate, which was a good thing. The negative, of course, was I'm Zeb that was running around the shul. Well, I didn't run around, but at 13 years old, I was the kid that grew up in the shul. So you had to get past that. That's a different story. But what happened was my first, I started in the month of June in 1999. And one of the hallmarks, one of the big challenges for a rabbi of a shul, of course, is the Yamim Noraim and writing speeches. And if you give it your all, you have at least 9 speeches to give in a very short period of time. And it's not just a little Dvar Torah in this week's parsha says. You're talking about it has to have chashiva, there has to be thought and really put your mind into it. So I was, needless to say, a little bit concerned. I didn't worry that I couldn't write, but I didn't know if it'll be up to par. And I felt that probably of all, whether it was Yisker or it was going to be the second day Rosh Hashanah, whatever it was, a Yom Kippur, to me, the night of Kol Nidre was going to be the most challenging of all. Because people, to quote Rabbi J.J. Schachter, for some of you who know him, he taught a course that I attended, a few-day course about how to speak to and how to write a sermon, quote unquote, used to be called. And he said, people come to shul after they've eaten before the coming to shul on Yom Kippur, and they're schwitzing, and they're just thinking, I'm so stuffed, and how am I going to make it through the fast? They don't want to hear what you have to say. So even I had that going in the back of my head. So I had to come up with some idea. Somehow out of the blue, I had this idea. There was something I received, a message or a letter I received. And I'm not going to tell you what that is because that's in the book. So you'll see that. I'm going to read one story in a little while. But I said, you know what? I'm going to tell the story. This impacted me when I got this particular letter. This really impacted me. So you know what? Maybe I'll think of 2 other things that I saw this year. And I'll kind of make it like a little trilogy. I'll make something like 3 different images, and I'll give a speech about that. Maybe people like it. And it's not just 3 stories. There are 3 stories that are true, and that maybe I can give a lesson from. I got nice feedback. TripAdvisor, I got 4 stars. That was nice. This guy's synagogue's okay. So I figured, okay, it was a nice idea. Comes next year, and I thought back to, I always kept my speeches. So I thought back to what am I going to do next year? So you know what? In Kvar, let's try it again. So I thought back to that year, and what was it that I saw during the year that was powerful, impactful, that could give me some kind of an idea? And I came up with 3 other images. And I did the same formula where I gave a talk, I had 3 true stories, either things I visually myself saw or experienced, or I was aware of during that year. And then the lessons that came from them, and people liked it. So why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I decided after that to continue year after year to do the same formula. So I was robbing the shul for 10 years. Therefore, there are 10 Kol Nidres. 3 times 10, even I know without a calculator, is 27. 31. Everyone knows that. Is 30. So I came up, and I had kept all this information, and I felt, maybe one day I'll write a book. I'll put this into a book format. And my dear Eshet Chayil, to whom this book is dedicated, yes, she does deserve applause. Yes. I give her a round of applause every night too. Otherwise, I don't get to eat. Just kidding. Where was I? Okay, so after, yeah, right, embarrassing Andy. Sorry about that. So actually, I had another book that I had sort of written already before that. Before we made Aliyah, for about a year and a half before I made Aliyah, I was blogging about the entire experience, very detailed experience. And I know some people here may have read it, and I know a lot. I got hundreds, thousands of hits actually, following our entire process of Aliyah, the things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, like being in IKEA for 7.5 hours, and I am not joking. Twice,
At least.
and at least that particular entry was called "Abandon Hope, All Ye Who Enter." Thank you, Dante. So in any case, so I was going to change that, put that into a book format, like it's like but there were too many of those that were done, and I said, okay, forget it. And I said, okay, maybe this. I didn't have the topic, the title of the 3 images, but okay. Okay, good. No, that's fine. Just ruin the whole evening by keeling over. Really, it's okay. Sorry, I shouldn't make you laugh. In any event, over the course of time, I said I really need to change it, turn this into a book, and it was apparent that it would have to come out sometime before.
The chorus.
Yeah, it's like I'm in the doctor's waiting room all of a sudden. It's okay. It's fine. I can handle rejection. And it became apparent that the time of year really to come out with this was somewhere right before the summer, because it was all these talks were really meant to inspire and to make you think about a form of introspection prior to the Yamim Noraim, during the Yamim Noraim. And my dear wife kept saying, okay, it's Iki Azman. Now, I didn't know much about publishing a book at that time, and I figured you type the document in Word, find a publisher, good to go. Doesn't work that way at all. Turns out that you don't just type it in Word and send it off to a publisher. First of all, publishers say, oh, we'll be happy to publish this. Please give us $10,000, not shekel, dollars. Okay, no problem. Sure. So every year I kept putting it off, and I lost the window of opportunity until this past year. I said, die, enough. I have to do this. So I talked to my dear friend Benji Hershkovitz, who is not here with us this evening. Most of you know who he is. He is a magnificent graphic artist, designer. The front page of the Mitzpe Nevo directory is always done by him for the last many, many years. And he has helped to design many books. And I met with him back in around Hanukkah time, actually, told him the plan. And he talked about we have to come up with a cover and needs to be typeset. I didn't know what that meant. So, okay, so I deferred to him. And we went back and forth. But before it even got to that stage, it had to be a book. The problem was they were speeches. And I put it together in a book format, and I wrote in a speaking voice. Along comes a magnificent human being. And she's not here this evening, but I hope I'm not embarrassing her while she's on Zoom. Rachel Lobel. I want to thank you. I'm looking right at the screen to tell you this. From the bottom of my heart, this woman volunteered to edit my book in hundreds of hours of review, changed it from a speaking voice to a written voice, so to speak, pun maybe not even intended, and turned it into something that I felt was good, but really made it so much better. And I'm eternally grateful to Rachel for that. And I'm eternally grateful to Benji for the cover, for the typesetting. It made it just visually so beautiful. And I know it says Al tistakel b'kankan el b'mashesh bo. Don't look at the outside. Don't look at the container. Look at what's inside. In this case, I think the kankan, Baruch Hashem, is also just thanks to Benji, just absolutely wonderful. I also want to thank Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb. Most of you probably don't know him personally, but you know of him through Torah Tidbits, or he was the former executive director of the OU. I contacted him a couple months back on a whim. I want someone to read my book and tell me what they think. I want an honest opinion from someone who doesn't know me. I mean, he knew of me. He spoke at my shul, which I'm sure was the highlight of his career. He had my picture on his wall, I'll bet, the day after. And I asked him to read the book. And I expected he was either going to send me a message, a little note that said, great read, everyone should get the book, or thumbs up, or I wouldn't write what he was going to say because it was just like, okay, nice, but you should do a rewrite. I got a magnificent letter from him that's part of it in the back cover, and the whole letter's on the inside. I won't read it. You can read it yourselves. That I was almost embarrassed when I read it. It was just so beautiful, a letter that I again probably thank him for that letter. I want to read a story. I want to read one of the stories from the book, maybe two, but for sure one. I have a reason for looking. What time is it right now? A reason for asking.
8:08.
8:08. Okay. The reason I ask is I have cousins who are in town from Toronto. Sorry. And the story is actually about my Zadie and his Zadie. And he won't be here still for a little while. So I'm going to read it now. It's called, okay, by the way it's set up is each chapter has 3 images. It doesn't have titles in each chapter. And it's just called image 1, image 2, image 3, etc. So this is image 3 in chapter 2. And it's called, I called it my paper when I wrote, it's called My Zadie's Watch. Now, again, because it's written as a trilogy, when I'm reading it now, you'll hear my starting with saying the word, the final image is, because it's the final image of that trilogy. One other point before I read this, and I mentioned this in the introduction of the book. This book is not meant to be sat down and read straight through like a little novel. It's meant to be read, pick up a story. There's no order. You can pick up any order you want. Read a story, think about it. If it applies to you, how you can take a lesson. Some are really short. Some are like 2 pages. Some are 3 pages, 4 pages. And someone said, whoa, someone commented, they said, oh, it's a thin book. No, it's 104 pages, but okay. But it's not about the amount of pages. I'm hoping that there's content here that's really going to speak to everybody. So this one's about my Zadie's watch. Okay, the final image is my Zadie's watch. Although I grew up in Chicago, much of my family, including my maternal grandparents, lived in Toronto. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a year at most, but the relationship between them and our Chicago family was a close one. In the days before internet, email, and cell phones, our method of communication was letters and occasionally a phone call. While we all built a strong relationship with them, I especially was close to my Zadie, Shmuel Aaron Posner, Zichrono Livracha. In May of 1973, the inevitable happened. My Bubby passed away. Then in February of 74, just 10 months later, my Zadie passed away. I was devastated by the death of my Bubby, as she was the first person close to me who died. But with the death of my Zadie, I was crushed. It was the end of an era on my mother's side of the family. Although I was only 15 years old, there was a gaping hole in my heart that I felt would never heal. My family flew to Toronto for my Zadie's funeral. From the airport, we went straight to his apartment. I began to look around the room. I could hear his voice, feel his love, and see his mark everywhere. Then I walked into his bedroom. On his bed was his clothing, and I realized that those were the last clothes and last things he had worn on this earth. Next to his clothing was his watch. I picked it up and I held it in my hand. It was at that moment that I felt the gravity of his loss so acutely, I began to wail inconsolably. I held his watch in my hand for what seemed like an eternity, and I cried like never before. I did not want to let go of it. As a matter of fact, for some inexplicable reason, it was as if I couldn't let go of it. Perhaps in my youthful mind, letting go of his watch was letting go of Zadie. Over the past many years, I've thought back to that day and to that moment. What is it about that watch, and how had it become so close to my grandfather, who lived 850 kilometers away? As I got older, I understood that the watch represented time my Zadie spent here on this earth. And at the moment when he died, his time stood still. In a certain sense, so did mine, with all the memories of him frozen in time. But what about the long distance between us and infrequent visits. How was it that, in spite of the distance and separation, we had been so close? Then it dawned on me, love doesn't know any distance. No matter how far apart we were, it was love that bound us together. While there was a physical distance between us, there was absolutely no spiritual distance between us. I took this idea to the next step, and that is the reason why his watch is the third image. The same is true of our relationship with Hashem. In the times that we had a Beit HaMikdash, we visited Hashem 3 times a year through the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel, or pilgrimage. Nowadays, some, quote, see him frequently, while others see him infrequently. However, for all of us, Hashem is not physically present, and in that sense, he is very distant. In a spiritual sense, he is very close to us. Love knows no distance. Hashem is always with us, as close as we choose. It is essential to realize that Hashem is as close to us as we let him be. That is what I learned from my Zaydi's watch, and when I think of what I think about on Yom Kippur. Let us remember that we are always under Hashem's watchful gaze. Let us remember to think about our shortcomings and how to change them to positives. We must always keep in mind that Hashem loves our efforts, always sees our positive deeds, and embraces us with fatherly love. And finally, let us remember that love knows no distance. It's the end of the first one. Tough. Good. The way I like to end is to thank, can't say someone. I want to thank Hashem, because that it doesn't go without saying. We say Tov Lahodot Hashem, it's good to give thanks to Hashem. By the way, the word Lahodot also means to admit. You have to admit that everything comes from Hashem. Why is it that Hashem, one of Hashem's name is Elokim, sounds plural? Because the word El means power. So Hashem is the source of all powers. God is the source of all. The fact that I can write, the fact that you can sit here, the fact that you can stand here, everything that grows is all from power from Hashem. So I recognize that whatever I can do, whatever I can accomplish in my life is only because Hashem gave me the ability to do so. I'm glad I discovered it at a later age, but I'm glad I discovered it. So I really do want to thank Hashem, not just in my heart, but publicly in front of everybody, that I know, and this is probably what motivates some of the stories, PU team, that I'm not always the best person I can be. But hopefully my heart's in the right place. And that's why I tried to put into 3 images, tried to put into the Piyut book. And that's my story. I want to close with another thank you, though, again, to everyone who's here for being here tonight. I also, again, thank our hosts, Uri and Annette. It's very humbling to be standing here. And I don't say that, it's very cliche. I want you to understand what that means. I did a chishuv one time, a calculation, that from 1999 until recently, I've spoken literally thousands of times. Divrei Torah, speeches, invocations, weddings, funerals, whatever, thousands of times. And I never take it for granted that I'm not talking to myself. There are other people that need to be engaged, right? Sometimes I am talking to myself, but that's also okay. Not everything comes out of my mouth is gold. I've been told. But to take something that's very personal and really expose yourself to an extent that you really see into some part of my neshama in my writing, whether it is the 3 images or the Piyut team, either volume, is very humbling. Because most of these things we keep to ourselves. These are things we think about if we ever do, and we don't necessarily share that with other people, other than maybe their spouse or some very close friend. And part of the reason I write is to hopefully inspire people to take the time to think a little bit more out of the box, to think a little bit more about their lives, not when they're, at 119 years, 11 months and 28, 9 or 30 days. It might be a little bit late then, maybe, even though you can even acquire your entire olam haba in literally 1 minute, 1 hour. But why wait? Why wait? Take that time, do something soon. The way this will work, this part, I'm going to sit down If anyone's interested in purchasing, I'm obviously no pressure whatsoever. Buy 1 or 2 or 20. The limit's 20 books a person. After that, we'll have to talk about mass production. It's anything on the table is 50 shekel. There's a note here: bit, paybox, cash, no Bitcoin, please, or rubles. For sure, not rubles. Happy to sign if you want to sign. You don't want to sign. You don't want to sign. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Just will never speak to you again. I thank you again for being here, for making this a part of your evening. I promised you. I didn't promise you here, but in passing, it would not be a long evening. So, thank you very much. I'm going to stop the Zoom. I'm going to just close the computer, bring a chair around, and sit down. So, give me just a minute to get organized. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. Just here.